It is a very good morning now to the Dubbo Region Mayor Matt Dickerson, and this week has been really a weird week with the announcement that Rex Airlines has gone into voluntary administration. We talked on Wednesday morning. At that stage, you mentioned that you hadn't been able to catch up with colleagues at Dubbo Regional Council. Have you been able to do that since?
Not necessarily specifically about this issue, and we will go through and have some more formal discussions. Really, from the Rex perspective, it's an important service they play, and we did talk about that earlier in the week, that they play an important role in Dubbo and in regional locations, and that's been their strength, has been flying to regional locations. And you only have to look at Dubbo Airport. If we go back 22 years ago when Rex first started, the passenger numbers going through Dubbo Airport were around, and I haven't got the exact number, but around the 100,000 mark. Last year, we had 195,000 go through Dubbo Airport, so you've doubled passenger numbers going through the airport, and Rex has been an important part of that. Obviously, we've got two airlines that fly to Dubbo, Rex and Qantas, but Rex has been an important part of that growth, and it just gives you an indication of just how much people use air travel now compared to, say, 22 years ago.
And not being impacted are those sub 340, I think it is, flights, those smaller ones, but Virgin Australia as well as Qantas saying that they'll help step in. But Matt, the Transport Union has said 250 jobs will be axed for the airline's regional arm and 360 jobs will go in capital cities. This really puts us on the brink of being a little bit scared about transportation, doesn't it?
Well, I think that's one of the things that's very important. It seems to me that the capital city routes are the ones that are being cancelled, and regional routes are the ones that are still going to operate, and that has been their strength. During COVID, Rex made the decision to go into some of those capital city routes, the Melbourne to Sydney, the Sydney to Brisbane, those type of routes. Now again, I don't want to make any commentary. I'm not an airline expert. Sure. I don't want to make any commentary on where they've gotten to in terms of their business and how they've arrived at that particular point. But it seems to me that the regional routes, Dubbo to Sydney for example, are still flying, and so people should still have confidence in booking those tickets, because what we don't want to see is a self-fulfilling prophecy. We don't want to see everyone say, oh no, I don't want to book my ticket on Rex, I'm concerned whether they'll be there tomorrow, I won't book on Rex, I'll only book on whatever other airline might serve that particular route, or I'll get in the car and drive and I won't go and fly, and then Rex's numbers plummet. And then the administrators, in looking at the numbers, say, well, the numbers are terrible for those regional routes, they're not sustainable, we won't be able to do anything to save this airline. So it's a hard task, but if people fly Rex normally, you should have some confidence, because even with those capital city routes, as you've said, Virgin have stepped in, have said they'll cover those tickets for people as well. So there's some confidence there you can have in still booking flights with Rex.
If it does happen and we lose these other smaller flights though, that will have an impact on what comes into the Dubbo Regional Airport, would it not?
Without a doubt. Now, you might hope that there'd be another airline, that obviously the passenger numbers are there, there might be another airline that can step in, but again, Rex's strength has been servicing smaller routes. So I think someone like Dubbo would probably be okay with another airline coming in, because other airlines have spoken to us over the years about flying Dubbo to Sydney, but the issue has been the slots. The slots at Sydney Airport, they're like gold. And if you've got an airline, say Rex for example, that already has those slots, they don't own the slots, but they retain those slots while they're being used. So another airline couldn't come in and compete on the Dubbo Sydney route because they just don't have the appropriate slots that they would need at Sydney Airport. If Rex was to disappear, then suddenly those slots would be available, so another airline could come in. But I have concerns for some of the smaller locations across the state. So somewhere like Parkes, for example, even Orange, the passenger numbers just aren't big enough for some of the larger airlines to be able to justify flying there. So those two ports, for example, aren't serviced by anyone else but Rex. Would someone else step in there when the passenger numbers are lower? I don't know. So it's a concern for regional New South Wales.
Without knowing all of the details, of course, about the voluntary administration, could councils like Dubbo Regional Council change the fee structure or maybe help a little bit to make it easier if there's access fees or, fees to come in and land at the airport? Is that something that we could do to help? Or not me, but, regional council?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it that all the airports in regional areas are typically owned by councils, and they could reduce those fees. But this gets back to that same argument about, should the general community be subsidising airport that's used by only a small percentage of the community, subsidise an airport that then makes it cheaper for an airline to keep flying? That's a difficult question and a philosophical question to some extent, but something that we've certainly tried at this council to try and make sure our business units are actually paying for themselves. The whole debate around the sale yards was to stop the subsidisation by the community of the sale yards, a business unit, and the same scenario would occur with the airport. Now, there might be a part here though, and in Western Australia, for example, there are some airlines that are subsidised to fly into some ports. So not an individual airline subsidised, but a port subsidised so that anyone that wants to fly there gets that subsidy. So there would be a place to play potentially for the federal government to say to councils, we'll give you some money to offset your operational costs, which means we could keep our fees lower. So there may be a place to play in that scenario, but I'd be concerned about WA Regional Council dropping our fees dramatically for all airlines, because you have to do it for everyone, to then have the community subsidising the airport.
All right, less than 30 seconds. End of term reports at council. I'm sorry to speed you up here.
We can have another chat about it next week, but end of term report, we've got to do it according to the Local Government Act. We've done a presentation that I'll actually post as a video. I've actually already written an end of term report for my newspaper column this week, and my podcast this week will feature that end of term report. Very important to review how we've gone over this term of council.
Because you've only got one more ordinary meeting on the 15th of August.
Correct, one meeting to go. We've had 34 council meetings so far this term, one more to go, and then obviously the election on the 14th of September, so not long to go.
All right, Matt Dickerson, WA Region Mayor, nice to see you. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Bret.